The next section now is Jochen. I believe she's already on the call with us. And before you're moving into his session properly, I will quickly just do a little brief introduction. He will be talking on best practices for building a user engaging actions on Google. Yeah. So a little bit about Jochen. Jochen is the founder and CEO of ANSI GmbH, an agency that consults on builds and maintain conversational interfaces for companies such as Allianz, BMW, Shell, Red Bull, Hedica, and Deutsche Telekom. Prior to starting ANSI in Berlin, Germany, Jochen worked as a developer and technical lead at startups in Japan, Singapore, and the US. He holds degrees from Western Michigan and Harvard University, and is one of 40 Google developer experts for Google Assistant worldwide. What a great profile! Yeah. Jochen, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you.
All right. So let's bring Jochen on the call to share us tell us more about actions on Google, and looking at the past experience, I believe we'll get the best from him today. Yeah. Over to you, Jochen.
All right. Well, thank you very much for that amazing introduction. It always feels a little strange when other people talk about you in that way. But thank you, and thank you everybody else from DevFest, Akoko. Let's get started. How I got started with voice, actually how I wanted to start talking about it. I'm a developer by heart. I've been programming since I was a child. My dad taught me how to program. My dad is also a programmer. And I always loved building games, like most of us. And I developed more games than I actually played by myself. One thing I have to admit, I'm absolutely horrible with UX and like anything visual. So all the Android apps I was building, they just didn't look very good. Almost nobody played them except like my group of friends. And it's hard. It's like it was a special thing to do, and I was always looking for a new way to build games. While I was living in Boston and going to school there, Amazon invited a bunch of people over to their facilities over there, and they had a hackathon. I'm an absolute hackathon fan. I still go to a lot of hackathons. And in that hackathon, they showed us Amazon Alexa, and they showed us one of the first versions of the REST API. So that back then there was no SDK yet or anything like that. It was a plain REST API where you used JSONs. And they showed it to us, and I built my first game for it. I absolutely fell in love with the whole building for voice. One of the reasons is obviously I could do it by myself. The other reason is I just saw the potential. And I mean, we just saw the amazing talk from Carlos. There's a lot of potential. There's a lot of people who use voice. And yeah, I just really wanted to work with it. And it was a hobby for a long time. And then in 2017, all of a sudden, I got an email from Amazon saying, hey, so many people are playing your games. We actually want to send you a reward. So yeah, I did this for fun. Like, this was never a thing for me to make money. This was never a thing for me to really start a career around. This was just, a hobby on the side. And every month, since Amazon did the original email, I get a little developer appreciation a check from Amazon every month. So this is what showed me, like, hey, there's a way to, this is getting bigger. There's definitely a market here for it. And I started in 2017, I started a company called Onsai. Onsai actually means voice in Japanese. As you heard earlier, I lived in Japan for a little while, so this was my homage to it. And also in 2017, I built my first Google Action. So why am I such a big fan of Google Action? I just told you all about Alexa. Google Actions, they had a few benefits. They were friendlier for developers, in my opinion. And one of the main things is you could actually get the whole sentence a person said. So Carlos earlier talked about the NLU part. So I'm not going to technical parts of my talk because Carlos did a great job on this. There's no point in repeating it. But the NLU gives you an intent of what was said. But as Carlos mentioned, you need to train your NLUs with things that people might say. In Google Actions, you actually get a whole log of what the person said that you don't get it in Alexa. So this was really drew me to Google Actions and why I started working more on Google Actions. Obviously, there's a lot of different cases why you want to build a Google Action. I built a ton of them for myself. So I built Google Actions that nobody else uses, and one of them is in my company. I can ask my Google how my server status are. I built, instead of having like a dashboard where I just look over a million lines, in the mornings I just ask Google to tell me how my server status is. So I built actions that are just for myself. They're never being published. Like I mentioned earlier, I love building games because I think it's a fun way to entertain. I recently became a dad. It's a fun way to interact with children. Voice is a great thing for that. We've worked with open source projects where we helped public transportation companies build Google Actions for visually impaired people and things like that. So when you think about it, if you really think about building something for voice, go around your day and think of is there something I would want to know right now that I could ask quickly? There's something, if there's this moment where you think, hey, I would love to have a quick answer or quick information on something, or I just want to have fun for a few minutes, and you have an idea, building for voice is really a great tool here. If you build for voice, when you start thinking about building for voice, you have this idea for your app. You have this idea for your game. We heard earlier, it's a natural conversation. The cool thing about building for voice, it's really one of the most natural ways to interact with technology, to interact with computers. And for us to think of how to interact with computers, really think about developing a persona for your app or for your action, so that when the person talks to it, he doesn't feel like he's talking to a robot, because that's one of the first downsides for talking to a voice system that is not, I would say, up to par, and why people don't come back. So we've all seen these old IVRs, or the telephone lines where we call in, and we really get frustrated. This is not what actions on Google are about. Actions on Google are supposed to be, lively, good, and you can build a persona about it. Also, when you start an action on Google, so let's say you've built amazing memory game. That is your new game. It's a game trainer where it's a memory game trainer. When you start this, so the normal way would be to be, hey Google, I want to talk to amazing memory trainer. Then Google says, okay, here's amazing memory trainer. This is where you start. So it makes sense to have a persona, to introduce yourself and to really shine as a person, because you are introduced just like a person would be introduced. A persona doesn't have to be a person, by the way. So it can be gender neutral, which we recommend. It can be any way you do. But when you start thinking of your voice application, think of how you want to, how do you imagine that other users would look at your persona? One thing we also saw earlier, when you start thinking of building your Google Action, Google Actions are used everywhere. I mean, once you have a Google Action out there in the wild that people use, you're going to see some amazing data. Especially if you write them in English, people all over the world use them. People use them on all kinds of different devices. I have a smartwatch. I use Google Actions, Google Assistant on my smartwatch. I use Google Assistant in my car. You can see behind me quite a few speakers. I use Google Assistants pretty much everywhere. And of course, I also use Google Assistant on my phone. There are ways when you build Google Actions, you can think like, okay, am I going to limit it to a screen-only device? Am I going to do Android? I'm going to do Android only because I want to use Canvas, or like screen-only devices with Canvas. Do I think, hey, this action is going to be used mostly in the car, and we've actually built actions that are mainly used in the car, so we're going to not rely on the screen or not use screens at all. So think about how the person would use it and how to best engage with the user. Also set the user expectations. You know, we all get that. When we're all developers, we all publish things. And every time I publish something, I constantly go on the store and check my star reviews and see if people like it and get feedback. And of course, we all dread that horrible 1-star review, but we all know it's going to come eventually. And one thing I've noticed is the best way to avoid a 1-star review is really to, set the user expectation. The thing you have to remember here, a person is talking to you, they might not even have a screen. So the easiest way to set the user expectation is choosing the correct name. If we have our game memory trainer, and then we tell them about pizza toppings that we like, it doesn't make sense. And yes, it's probably not an extreme when you do it, but make sure you pick a title for your action on Google that is right, that makes sense, that you can bring together. Next thing is, when a person comes for the first time, introduce yourself. We just talked about persona. Tell them what the person can do here. Tell them, hello, this is a game trainer. Come back every day for new updates. Come back to, we keep the score, like, make sure that the person knows what they can do on your Google in Action, and it really will reflect in your reviews. And it also will help you getting the Sticky Award. That means that people come back to your Google Actions on a semi-regular basis. Google Action has cool awards if you build them. The next thing is, we heard context earlier. So context is something, yes, in action builders, it has definitely helped. But also when designing your voice application, you should think about it. Here's an example. With simple, even in Alexa at the beginning, but today, simple voice applications, you could ask, like, okay, Google, who was the 44th president of the United States? Obviously, the 44th president, Google would respond, Barack Obama was the 40th president of the United States. Then, this is a simple query, there's no big issue. But then if the person is like, how old is he? The context means, like, going back also means that he should be resolved into Barack Obama. And then you can do the query, like, oh, Barack Obama is 59 years old. This is the kind of things with context you should look into, making sure it's like a fluid conversation. It's a natural conversation. No person would ask in the second time, how old is Barack Obama if you just asked about him. So when you build your applications, really think about how it could be natural, and context is a big part of it. Conversational markers, another great way to make conversations more human-like. Conversational part, you know what, let me just give you an example of what I consider a conversational marker. Let's say Google Assistant asks you, hey, how many hours did you sleep last night? The user says, about 7. And Google Assistant says, how many fruits or vegetables did you eat yesterday? There's no really, there is no transition. There is no, I don't know, hey, did the Google Assistant just understand me correctly? Is there any, there's no confirmation here. I don't know what was going on. And the user can easily get lost in a conversation. Now, let's do it the way it might make a little bit more sense. Virtual assistants again. I'll be asking a few questions about your health. First, how many hours did you sleep last night? The user says about 7. The virtual assistant says, good job. And how many servings of fruit and vegetables did you eat yesterday? You see this difference? By a quick introduction, I'll be asking a few questions about your health and obviously about the good job, referring to the last thing the user said, which is almost like an implicit confirmation saying, yeah, I understood you, because I'm pretty sure when I would write this and I would say I slept 2 hours last night, I would be like, ooh, that's not that much. Like make it relevant for the conversation. And it really feels more natural. I know many of us are developers. I mean, this is DevFest after all. But even developers, we sometimes have to think outside the box when it comes to voice and really think of how to bring a natural conversation down in our code. So the next thing I would say I would talk about is voice shopping. So voice shopping, we have 2 different kinds of voice shopping. The first I'm going to talk about is digital goods. So obviously, unfortunately, I wouldn't say that. Obviously, unfortunately, digital goods currently is only available in the US. That doesn't mean you have to be living in the US to build Google Actions with digital goods, but you can only publish them in the US regions right now. Digital goods are things that you use in your actions yourself, or anything that is not a physical good. So one item is non-consumer digital transactions. These are like in-app purchases in Android, you can imagine. Behind the scenes, one-time payments, anything like you can add there. The next one would be consumable digital goods. This is something that's often used in games. As I mentioned, this is making voice games kind of my hobby. So this is more towards where I usually go. This is when you want to do the freemium model. So you have a simple part of your game available, but you add things that people can pay for. Might it be extra lives? Might it be faster recharge? Another level of your game if you make an adventure game. All these things, these are consumable digital goods transactions. And digital subscription transactions is where you have a concurrent monthly payment, for example. Again, could be also part of the freemium model where if you want to give access to the whole game, you charge a premium for. The other part of voice shopping is physical goods and reservations. This is really starting to, get traction, I would say. We've built multiple voice shopping experiences at my company. Anything for a grocery store where we have over 50,000 items that you can search for and buy over Google Action. 2, one Google Action specifically for car to pay tolls on roads. So imagine driving down the road. You used to have to pull over the gas station to pay your toll. Now you can do it over Google Action. And obviously also reservations. So anything from a hairdresser to restaurants, something quick and easy. It's really, it's not really a physical good, but reservations falls under physical good and reservations in the transaction API. What you do when you do voice shopping, the really important thing is to start out with, it needs to be easy to use. So voice shopping, it's a completely different experience for a person, especially if he doesn't know the product he's shopping for. So I'm talking about voice search in a minute, but the ease of use is very important. Oftentimes, what we've noticed with voice shopping, conversations are fairly quick. So, in the grocery store example, most people who use this, they don't sit there and ask for a whole grocery list. Instead, they're probably in front of their fridge and they're like, oh, I'm out of milk. And then they're like, okay, Google, tell XYZ to add milk to my basket. And it's in your basket, it's done. And they do this multiple times a week until their shopping cart reached a certain threshold, and then they just order it. Yeah, so this is the really important parts. When we talk about product search, and this is where we spent I'm running out of time. Product search is really important. When you think about it in search, we have two kind of, I started earlier, we have two kind of ways people can use actions on Google, with a screen or without a screen in this particular instance. If a person uses a Google Home in the kitchen, they don't have a screen, and they're looking for, let's say, milk. The typical grocery store here in Europe has a variety of milk. Might it be low, the fat content might be different, there might be different brand, and you really need to inform the user. You can't just be like, oh, I have milk for €2 and I have milk for €1. Which one do you want? That doesn't work. If the person would see the product, and over the last, I don't know how many years, marketing has been all about visual. I mean, you have designers who sat there and inched out every inch of that milk carton. Now, all of a sudden, you're supposed to, tell the person, not over visuals, but over voice, what kind of milk you should choose. So you really need to think about how to present a product, especially if the person has never purchased this product before. So obviously, if you have account linking, is this a new query, or does he buy milk every week? If he buys milk every week and he bought the same brand and the same type every week, this is a really easy search. You offer him his top choice every time. If he switches between two different items, you offer him both and you ask him which one does he want. So this is obviously something that is easy. It gets more complicated if I've never purchased milk at that retailer before, because I have multiple different kinds of milk. So I need to start making some guesses and choices in the background. First thing I need to do is, even though I might have 15 types of milks, I can't just be like, I have milk from cow 1, and I have milk from cow 2, I have milk from cow 3. If you keep a list like this to the user doesn't really listen to it much. We've noticed in voice, the last thing we tell the user is the most important thing. Our general recommendation is don't list off more than 3 items for a user to choose off, because it just gets too complicated and the person gets confused. So you need to make some choices, how to represent the best 3 items. Our usual goal is to bring 3 items in the biggest variety that might hit the spot that at least one is close enough to what the person wants, that he's happy. The second thing is, if you have customized search for each user, you can make other choices using machine learning models depending on his previous purchase to make sure you offer the correct assortment of milk. So personalized search, especially in voice, is something that is really important. That is it from me. I want to thank Carlos again for this great presentation earlier. I hope that I was able to give you some insights on how to develop, how to design for voice, and then with Carlos' intent, how to develop for voice. I hope that you guys are ready to build your first Google Actions. It is a lot of fun. It is really rewarding. You can see when people start using your actions all over the world. It is great. They're fantastic hackathon projects because you can build your first Google action in a few hours, and you can spend months improving and improving it because you just get addicted to it. It's a lot of fun. I have a QR code here for my LinkedIn. If you have questions, contact me on LinkedIn. I definitely yeah, definitely would love to help you. If you have questions, just let me know. Also my Twitter. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you for your session, Jochen, and it's a very wonderful session and so very, very impactful. We really appreciate your session, and we believe that we've learned a lot from your session, from the voice chopping, and so many activities that you can do with Google Build Action. So for developers on the call today, in the session, the current event, I believe you've grabbed one or two things about another app ideas and what you could use Build Action to do, and how you could leverage on Build Action to help businesses and also communities around you to tackle some problems, to solve some major challenging problems that is affecting your community. And that is what this is all about, and that is why we keep doing this every blessed day. We really want to solve a problem, and how do we solve it? And that's basically the information that we are getting from everyone that speak to us today. Yeah. So thank you for Jochen. I think by the time after the next section, we could be able to have a question and answer session, whereby I believe there are a lot of questions waiting for you, basically. So thanks, Jochen.
Thank you.